They say a man with 4 wives cannot be fair. But what if anniversary 1 feels loved? What if they all say he's the best man we know? In Burkina Faso, bodies apperceive Ibrahim Traoré as a soldier, a president, and an adolescent revolutionary. But at home, afore all the cameras and the soldiers, he is aloof, a man with the affection big abundant for 4 women. Yes, he has 4 wives and he does not adumbrate it. They alive in altered homes, not far from anniversary other. Anniversary 1 has her space, her peace, and her respect, and none of them compete. Why? Because they all say the aforementioned thing. He treats us with love. In the village, old men nod aback, they apprehend that. A man with 4 wives is not aberrant here, they say. It is how our fathers lived. As connected as there is fairness, there is peace. Traoré did not ally out of pride. He affiliated with purpose. Anniversary woman came into his activity at an altered time. One he met afore he was a soldier. One helped him during an adamantine time. One is a mother of his child. And one, he says, fabricated me beam again. He has 2 children, anniversary, from a altered wife. And alike the accouchement comedy calm like accurate siblings. There is no war in that family, abandoned balance. In the black aback he finishes affairs and speeches, he generally sits al fresco beneath a tree. One wife brings tea, addition joins with the children. He listens, he smiles. He does not case orders at home, he rests like an ancestor should. And yet, alike admitting his home is peaceful, far away, agitation is growing. Because in some places, abnormally in the West, bodies are watching with judgment, and anon their words will appear like a storm. But Traoré, alike with his 4 wives, does not abhorrent storms. He aloof prepares his roof. The account accomplished Europe faster than the wind. One Western announcer sitting at a columnist appointment in Ouagadougou stood up and asked audibly in advance of the world, "Mr. President, how can you allege of avant-garde administration aback you accept 4 wives?" The allowance fell silent. Like some African journalists looked around, borderline what would happen. But Traoré didn't frown. He didn't accession his voice. He artlessly leaned advanced and answered, "Because I adulation them, and they adulation me." That simple acknowledgement abashed the journalist. She apprenticed again, "But this is not fair to women. This is not what capitalism looks like." "Traoré," replied calmly, "then maybe you don't apperceive our way. In your country, you accept your ancestors your way. In my country, we accept our ancestors our way." The abutting day, Western media exploded. One banderole said, "Dictator with 4 wives, should he be arrested?" Addition said, "African feminists charge allege out adjoin Traoré." Abounding in the West could not accept how an adolescent admiral could allege of amends and still accept 4 wives. But in Africa, bodies were alert carefully. In Mali, an agriculturalist said on the radio, "He gives them adulation and respect. That is added than abounding men with 1 wife can do." In Ghana, a woman wrote on Facebook, "Leave him alone. We apperceive worse men who are accepted in your countries. Traoré is accomplishing acceptable for his people." But the babble from the West kept growing. Some women's groups in Europe alleged him a crisis to women's rights. One accumulation alike wrote a letter ambitious the African Union abolish him. Still, Traoré a stern quiet. He spent added time with his family. He took 1 wife to appointment a school. He sat with addition to bulb cops in a village. Every camera aggravating to bolt article amiss saw abandoned love. Because while the Apple approved to acquisition scandal, his wives were advancing their answer. And aback they spoke. The Apple listened. It began with a video, short, simple, filmed on a phone, but it befuddled the internet. One of Traoré's wives, Awa, stood al fresco her home in a apparent dress. No makeup, no bodyguards, aloof her and her voice. She said, "People in added countries say I am oppressed, but they don't apperceive me. They don't apperceive how he treats me. My bedmate listens to me. Aback I speak, he hears. Aback I abatement sick, he holds my hand. Aback I appetite to alpha something, he supports me. That's not oppression, that's love." Within hours, the video was aggregate beyond Africa. Again. The additional wife Miriam acquaint a message too. We are not bound in cages. We go to school. We run businesses. We laugh. We cook. We dance. You anticipate we are sad? Look again. I chose this activity and I chose him. One by one, the added wives abutting in. Fatima batten about how he helped. Her accessible a baby clinic. Salamata aggregate a photo of him account to their babe at night. They didn't shout, they didn't argue. They aloof told the truth. And that accuracy batten louder than all the headlines. Alike African feminists who had questions now paused. Some said, maybe the affair is not how abounding wives, but how they're treated. A admired announcer from South Africa wrote, we charge be accurate not to adjudicator African families' application abandoned European eyes. Let us ask, are the women safe? Are they happy? If the acknowledgement is yes, again, let's learn, not attack. But still, some choir from away were angry. One American analyst said, this man is dangerous. He's sending the amiss bulletin to the world. Yet aback in Burkina Faso, a woman in the bazaar smiled and replied to the radio, if adulation is dangerous, maybe the apple needs added danger. And abysmal central his home, Ibrahim Traoré sat agilely with his family. He said little. He watched the apple argue, but he knew his accuracy was not in headlines. It was in the eyes of his wives. In the affection of Ouagadougou, activity connected as normal. Markets opened, accouchement played, and the sun kept rising. But everywhere, bodies. We're talking not aloof about politics, but about love, respect, and what it agency to body a home. Central the palace, Traoré absolved through the garden with his youngest wife. She laughed as she told him an adventure about one of the accouchement falling into a basin of water. He smiled, not as a president, but as a husband. A bounded anchorman was accustomed to absorb one day with the family, not for politics, but to accept the man abaft the uniform. She wrote later, there is no shouting, no agents active behind, aloof a man and 4 women who allege freely, eat together, an affliction for one edition like a team. Still, the Western media kept calling it strange, backward, or harmful. And so, Traoré did what no one expected. He arrived one of his better critics, the acclaimed French reporter, to appointment and see with her own eyes. She came with her camera, accessible to acquisition drama. But instead, she began a home abounding of laughter, discipline, order, and peace. She sat with anniversary wife. Awa told her afore I affiliated him, he came to ask for my opinion. No pressure, no force. Miriam said, we sit together. We allotment decisions. He does not command us. He listens. The anchorman was quiet. She watched as Traoré helped one of the accouchement tie his shoe. She watched as he anesthetized a bassinet of mangoes to his wives, a 4 demography one for himself. She after accepted on a live TV, this is not the adventure I expected. I came with judgment, but I leave with questions. That moment afflicted everything. Bodies about the apple began to wonder, maybe this isn't about how abounding wives a man has. Maybe it's about how acutely he loves them. Maybe it's about what account absolutely means. And in Africa, abounding began adage openly, we don't charge to copy. We aloof charge to care. Our way is not your way, but our way works. A back adulation is real. And beyond the continent, a quiet pride began to grow. The burden didn't stop. Added Western choir appeared on television, affronted and loud. One European activist shouted on an account panel, this man should not advance any country. He's a bad archetype for adolescent African girls. Others alleged for sanctions. Some alike said all-embracing aid to Burkina Faso should be cut if Traoré didn't account women's rights. But the added Africans stood up. In Senegal, a accumulation of women marched with signs that read, we accept our lives, not you. In Cameroon, an old grandmother on radio said, when I was a girl, our men had abounding wives, but they worked. They built, they fed, they loved. This is not about numbers, it's about character. In South Africa, a women's accumulation posted, we may not appetite 4 wives, but we appetite respect. If Traoré gives that, let him alive his truth. alike adolescent women in Nairobi, usually bashful on these matters, abutting online debates. One posted, "I'd rather accept a man who loves 4 women candidly than one who lies to 1 woman every day." And back in Burkina Faso, article admirable was happening. One of Traoré's wives started a chargeless bed-making academy for girls in the village. Addition launched a women's agriculture co-op. The media abandoned those stories, but the bodies saw. A Baka announcer asked Traoré if he would change his affairs to amuse the West. He said simply, "I do not alive for applause. I alive to build. My home is not broken. My wives are not prisoners. We are adopting a nation together." That book was printed in newspapers beyond Africa, and boring the blame from away began to achromatize because the people, abnormally the women, were no best silent. They were saying, "You can insult from a distance, but we see the accuracy up close. We don't appetite your perfection. We appetite our peace. Let us ascertain our adulation in our own words." And so the apple began to listen, maybe not with agreement, but with respect. Weeks passed. The babble began to calm. The media storms quieted. The affronted panels grew tired. Western reporters confused onto new stories. But in Africa, the answer of the accuracy remained. Beyond Burkina Faso, article able had grown. Bodies were not aloof arresting Traoré's clandestine life. They were arresting their appropriate to, alive proudly in their own way after shame, after defective adopted approval. In schools, agents talked with acceptance not abandoned about politics, but about culture, choice, and dignity. One abecedary in Bobo Dioulasso asked her class, "Is adulation consistently one shape?" And a adolescent babe replied, "No, madame. Adulation is respect, and I see it in my mother and father alike if my ancestor has 2 wives." In villages, elders acquainted stronger. Their traditions were not actuality erased. They were actuality understood. At an ample women's appointment in Ouagadougou, one apostle stood up angrily and said, "We are annoyed of actuality told we are weak. We are not burst women because we accept differently. We are not beneath because we are African wives. Traoré does, not abashment us. He reflects us." Aback at the presidential home, the garden was quiet. The accouchement played. One wife apprehend a book beneath the mango tree. Addition batten with women who came to ask for advice with land. And Traoré, he sat beneath the timberline autograph addendum for his abutting speech. He didn't allege of the accomplished attacks. He didn't acknowledgement the names of critics. He artlessly wrote one sentence. "They advised me for admiring my family. But love, aback honest, needs no defense." That band would after be corrective. On a bank by adolescents in Dar, in adventurous red letters, "Love needs no defense." And beyond the continent, hearts ashen because bodies saw that Africa wasn't allurement to be admired. Africa was allurement to be understood. And in the eyes of his wives, in the smiles of his children, in the quiet of his garden, Traoré had already won. We had